Right now in studio, I'm Vince Coglianese. I'm joined by Amber Athey filling in for Mary Walter. Thank you, Amber.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
And Tom Fitton also joining us from Judicial Watch this morning on a busy legal news morning. It seems like we have a lot of these, so we always have to keep bringing Tom back. Good morning, Tom.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
Nice to have you. It's a big day yesterday. Your reaction to the news middle of the day yesterday that Anthony Kennedy is retiring?
Well, it's a big opportunity to solidify a strong conservative majority on the court. Anthony Kennedy was conservative in some areas of the law, but he was really out there on others. So you can get someone who's going to be more consistently conservative, someone who's going to apply the law rather than kind of insert his own views into his decisions. We've got too many politicians as it is here in Washington, D.C. We certainly don't need them on the Supreme Court.
Well, I saw somebody point out this morning, the hysterics around the court really go to show you how powerful the Supreme Court has actually become in terms of making law in the United States. And it might be time that we reel back from that. That's not the job of the Supreme Court to be activists. It's to follow the Constitution, let the Congress make the laws, and let the president enforce them. Yet the Supreme Court has gotten sort of out of control over time.
Well, these left-wing groups and activists like to use the courts to impose their will on the American people, since they often can't convince them at the ballot box or through the legislative process. I think most Americans agree the courts are designed to apply the law, not make up the law, impose a particular point of view or legislative fiat through their judicial powers. This is a losing issue for the left. That's why they're so angry about it. And the problem for the Democrats in the Senate are they're going to have to manage the expectations of their left-wing activists who want them to go down with the ship on this, when in fact we're going to get a good justice out of this president who has promised a list of good justices he's going to pick from, and it's going to be hard to argue against all of them. So it's going to be a good victory for those of us concerned about the rule of law, and having justices who have a fidelity to the Constitution as opposed to those who want to amend it sitting on the bench.
Speaking of liberal activists, the Democratic Party is really in a pickle here because they have very little recourse for stopping this new justice, the appointment of the new justice. But there's a split in the Democratic Party now between progressives and the more traditional blue dogs. Progressives are going to be angry if they don't do anything. What can the Democrats possibly do, though, to keep their base happy?
But there's not much they can do. I don't think they have the votes to sustain a filibuster. I don't think a filibuster is appropriate for Supreme Court justices. I think any Supreme Court justice deserves an up or down vote. So I don't think that's a good argument politically or practically. They're arguing last week, or they're arguing yesterday, that there shouldn't be a vote on a Supreme Court justice during an election year, which is just silly. The argument last year was there shouldn't be a vote on a Supreme Court justice during a presidential election year. We're about to change presidents.
By the way, that rule is owed to Joe Biden, who made the same argument in 1992 when George H.W. Bush was attempting to nominate a justice. Joe Biden was making that very argument, and that's what Mitch McConnell actually cited when he did it during a presidential election year.
Well, that's right. And Elena Kagan was nominated and approved in 2010. There's an election year virtually every year here in Washington, D.C., and there was a congressional election in 2010 during which Elena Kagan was nominated and approved. Look, there aren't too many arguments the Democratic senators can make, and as I said earlier, Amber, they're going to have to appease their base somehow, make it seem like they're doing their best, and they probably will try to do their best to stand for whatever values they have, but this is something that if the Republicans stick together, and I suspect they will, conservatives will be happy with the outcome.
Yeah, and another reason to be happy with the Trump administration, if you're unhappy with other things, that just for conservatives, having a Supreme Court justice and not having Hillary Clinton pick these two Supreme Court justices is a huge win. I know I went home yesterday and I talked to my wife about it, and I was like, at least for our kid, here's a legacy that she's going to have for years to come, well beyond the next 2 to 6 years of the Trump presidency.
Well, and when you think about it, it's been a tremendously transparent process. Many of these picks, remember, he came up with a list. He's added a few names to the list since the initial list during the campaign. But those people were on the ballot, practically speaking, with President Trump. Everyone knew who he was planning to pick. That was a great move, very transparent. So there were no surprises, frankly, on this list for any voter
I don't know if you have
who went to the polls in 2016.
I'm not sure if you have any favorites on the list, but I did see Mike Lee quickly rush to the microphones yesterday. He was asked about his ambitions. He is on the list, the Senator Mike Lee, and he was asked about it. And he was like, I wouldn't say no to the opportunity. It's something he said before. Ted Cruz rushed out and said Mike Lee would be a great guy for this. And I don't know. I wonder if you have any reactions to this list just yet, or you're kind of waiting with the rest of us to see how this all sorts out.
My guess is that virtually anyone on the list would do a good job as a Supreme Court justice, and the political calculus as to who versus someone else, a senator versus a woman judge, or the usual political calculations that come into play. My guess is going to come down to the president having meetings with to select a number of these individuals and personally deciding based on how those meetings go.
Big Justice Department and FBI news yesterday and today. We're going to get into that in just a moment with Tom Fitton as Peter Strzok testifying on Capitol Hill for I believe 11 hours yesterday behind closed doors. And also Christopher Wray and Rod Rosenstein set to make a public appearance today. I want to get Tom's reaction to all of it. Hold on tight.